Today, I have a good one for you. We're going to look at the Platinum 3776, a very popular pen, but one with the coarse nib. So, last time I talked about the Pilot 92, which is a pen that I had a friend bring for me from Asia. So, I actually no longer have that pen. I decided to pass that one along to another friend of mine who preferred to have it. You can watch that video if you're curious about that one. But this is another pen that the same friend brought for me from Asia. So I thought you and I could take a look at this together. This box is actually not the easiest to get out. But in full transparency, I opened this pen already and played around with it for a bit because I wanted to give you my views on how I think the nib is, because I think this nib is one of the less understood nibs in the market and one that people tend to avoid. But I wanted to show you what it was like and give you my thoughts. But this is what the pen looks like when you first get it out of the box. It comes in this plastic sleeve. It has a very similar sort of thing here that's on the clip, but unlike Pilot, this does not show the retail price of the pen, which is actually probably good for Platinum because they've increased the retail price a couple of times in Japan recently. Comes with a ink cartridge, and then when you pull this off, you have your warranty card and owner's manual. So if you remember my video about the Pilot 92, you'll see that this is a very similar way of packaging the pen. So let's take this off and get rid of this packaging. Okay, so here is the Platinum 3776. This is in their white finish. It's actually a very nice white. So on its own, it may just look like a very normal white, but when you compare it to something like a pure white, like this Pilot Explorer, you can see, hopefully the camera picks it up, you can see that the Platinum is more of an ivory white, and it just gives it a softer, more calming type of feel, at least to my eye. So I actually like this white quite a bit. The other thing is, compared to this 3776, which I've had for years, they've changed the way they do the center band. So the printing now, it's like the texture is raised now, and hopefully the gold plating is nicer than what they did before. So you can see before, the gold plating just wears off. This one, it looks nice now. It definitely, the lettering is different. It looks good. Hopefully it stays looking decent for longer than the pens used to. So that's not what you're here to see. You're here to talk about this nib. So this is the C nib. So C stands for coarse, and you can see the tipping on this nib is just massive. If you compare this to a Platinum fine nib, you can see that difference. That's a pretty substantial difference in terms of the tipping material, especially from this angle. I'm not sure if you can see on the side here. The tipping on the C nib is quite generous. So this is a nib that I've stayed away from for a long time, for years and years. This is the first one of these I've ever tried. And the reason is I think it's just a misunderstood, underappreciated offering. And a lot of that has to do with the name. So if you look up Coarse online, like I just did, the definition is rough, bristly, scratchy, prickly, hairy, shaggy, or rude, crude, and vulgar. That doesn't really sound like an appealing type of option. But name aside, this is actually a really cool nib. So let me just show that to you. So as usual, I have my endless recorder notebook, Tomoe, excuse me, Tomoe River paper, and see if that's in the frame here. So this is what the coarse nib is like to use. This is the platinum. It's a 3776 coarse nib, and this is platinum blue black. So before I talk in more detail about this particular nib, let's talk about Platinum's nib range, because I've used just about all of them and wanted to give you some thoughts. So Platinum's range, it starts with the ultra extra fine. They have an extra fine, soft fine, fine, soft medium, medium, broad, C, which is this coarse nib, and music. So Platinum, they don't have as many of the specialty nibs as Pilot or Sailor. Sailor has things like the zoom nib. They have the whatever the other one is called, where it's more of an architect type grind. Pilot has Waverly nibs, stub nibs, music nibs. So Platinum doesn't have as wide of a range as those other two manufacturers, but they do seem to focus on the finer nibs. So I've had experience with this one, this one, I own one of these, I've tried this one, I own this, I haven't tried this one, this is the C nib, and I have tried the music. So in my opinion, just in my, maybe it's just not as refined of a being able to tell the difference, I can't tell the difference really between these two. I dislike both of them. They feel quite delicate, and they don't really give you a lot of difference in terms of the way they write. And the other thing about this is, even though these nibs are 14 karat gold, I don't really feel a lot of difference in the extra fine and the ultra extra fine between the gold nibs and the steel nibs. I have a Pilot Kakuno with a extra fine nib, and to me, it writes similarly to a Platinum ultra extra fine or extra fine. So I don't understand why both of these exist in the lineup. It's a very subtle difference between the two, if there's any, and personally, not for me. So the soft fine and the fine actually feel very similar. This pen that I use on a day-to-day basis is the fine. So you can see, I don't really have any need to go finer than that in a pen. This is by far the finest gold nib pen that I use, and that's the Platinum Fine. This is the finest line width to me, where it doesn't feel delicate. Like, I don't feel like this one, if I accidentally press harder than I intend to, it's gonna throw the times off of alignment or something. So that's the finest nib I typically use on a daily basis. All right, so then the soft medium. This nib has a lot of fame associated with it, mainly because it's not the easiest to get. In the past, it's been reserved for Nakaya pens. I don't own any Nakaya pens. Recently, it's been available on some of the 3776 special editions, and people, go crazy after this nib size. It feels a lot like a Platinum medium, at least to me. So in my opinion, there's not a lot of difference between these two. The medium is great, but this is where I'm a little bit confused in the Platinum lineup. because Pilot and Sailor both offer something in between the fine and the medium. So Pilot calls theirs a fine medium, Sailor calls it a medium fine. Whatever it is, they offer something in between. And I feel like Platinum is missing a bit in this category because their fine is very fine and their medium is quite broad. So it's a big jump to go from the fine to the medium, but the medium is a great nib. I haven't tried the Platinum Broad before, so can't say much. This C nib is fantastic. The C nib is really, really great. I'm going to tell you about why I like it so much. The music nib is okay. It's a stubby nib. In my opinion, Sailor and Pilot make a better music nib, but just my opinion. And then finally, in terms of this C nib, which is this pen, I think Platinum would do themselves a favor by calling this more of like a double broad than a C, because I think the Coarse nib gives a bit of the wrong impression and makes it easy to be a misunderstood offering. But Platinum's not alone. Pilot also calls it a Coarse nib. So, all right, with that out of the way, why do I say this nib is really, really nice? Well, because this nib has a very interesting blend of being very smooth, which you would expect with that much tipping material, but it is not over polished. So there's no baby's bottom, there's no skipping. But my absolute favorite part of this nib is that it has that typical Platinum pencil-like feedback. It's just a bit of feedback when you write that makes it very, very precise. And I think that's a really interesting combination, to have a nib that is so broad, but also have that pencil-like feedback, which is more common in the finer points. I think this is really cool. This is not a glassy, smooth nib. When you write, it is incredibly smooth, but it gives you that texture when you write, which I think is super, super cool. So it feels like writing with like a big soft nib pencil, like something like a 5B type of nib or something, or 5B lead, something like that, which I think is really cool. So this is a very interesting offering. The C nib is the widest non-stub type of nib that that Platinum offers. So you can see it's a round tip, so whether you're on the downstroke or the horizontal stroke, it should be similar in terms of the line width. So it's a round nib, it's not a stub nib, but it does offer a lot of shading when you write. It offers great feedback. It's super smooth. It's not too wet. It's not one of those like gusher type of pens. So when you write, it's not like the ink is gonna stay on the page forever and not dry. It's a very controlled amount of wetness, and I'm really, really, really impressed with this nib. I wish I knew about this sooner. I would have added one to my collection. So unlike the Pilot 92 that I showed you last time, which felt very similar to pens that I already have in my collection and ultimately made me decide not to keep it, this one is a truly new writing experience. I'm not in love with the Platinum 3776 in terms of the look or the feel or just the pen overall, but this nib really does it for me. So this pen will be staying in my collection, and just wanted to show it to you. So hopefully that was fun. Hopefully it was cool to see. I haven't seen a lot of content about the C nib before, so hopefully it was fun to see how the nib sort of stacks up across what else is offered from Platinum. And that's just about all I have to say. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.